Hi everyone, welcome to our second episode of Her Data Learns. I have my co-host Jennifer with me, and we also have our guru of the day, Jenny Martin. Jennifer, would you like to introduce her?
Yes, Jenny, and before we get started, I just want to thank you. I don't know the Tableau world, how many people really use Tableau Prep. For me, for whatever reason, it's always been a little intimidating. And for Danushki and I, a lot of our work is in SQL for pulling data internally. And so we haven't really had the need, but I did stumble upon this huge data set that was just awful mess. And everybody said Tableau Prep, and you were the guru. That everybody said we should reach out to. You sent us some resources, so it's far less intimidating, but I'm very excited for today's call and ready for you to walk us through this. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and kick it off, the floor is all yours, Jenny.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. My name's Jenny, and I am from the Information Lab over in the UK. I'm part of the data school, which is where we kind of train for about 4 months in Tableau and Alteryx. So that's where I first got introduced to Tableau Prep, and I've loved it ever since, really. It's the kind of logical problem solving that kind of you have your input, you have your output, and what steps do you need to take to get from A to B. I find that really interesting and really exciting. So that's why I like talking about Tableau Prep. So
I love how excited you are.
I'm so excited. I can't wait, because this has been a game changer. Let me just say, like the little spices that you've given me as far as resources was a game changer. So I cannot wait.
Cool. So I'm just going to share my screen there. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, I'll just go through a little bit of PowerPoint before we jump into prep to give us some introduction. So I'll be talking to you about what is Tableau Prep to start off with, why self-service data prep is so important, just because you can't talk about prep without talking about its self-service nature. And then we'll go through a little example together. And it'll be, spoiler alert, a prep and data example. So prep and data is like a weekly challenge site that I help to run. So if you want to download the data and follow along, you're welcome to. Okay. It'll be step by step. So just to quickly say, what's Tableau Prep? We kind of discussed it already a little bit at the start there, but as the name suggests, it's all about preparation, data prep. It's actually 2 tools, just to clarify that straight away. So if you're saying Tableau Prep, it could be Tableau Prep Builder or Tableau Prep Conductor. And if you're familiar with kind of the Tableau world of desktop and server, it's kind of exactly like that. Builder is the application, and Conductor is kind of how you share it, how you refresh your data, how you get it up on server, basically. So that's something to bear in mind. And just if you're wondering how can I get my hands on prep as well, if you have a creator license in the Tableau world, you will have access to Tableau Prep as well. The same license works for both. So that's nice to have that available to you. So it's data preparation for Tableau, but actually with the functionality recently that's come around, you can also write to databases too now. So you can read in data from a database, output it to a database, clean it all up, and then connect to it from any system after that. So it's not just for Tableau. It can help you in many different situations. And yeah, it's a great tool for the self-service data preparation because it really isn't too difficult to pick up, hopefully, I think. That's definitely my biased opinion. It's not a big, scary lot of coding. It's really clear what's kind of happening at each stage. So it's great for putting empowerment to analysts so that they can just pick it up and run with it. So I mentioned scary SQL code because to me, I know you were saying that you kind of use it a lot in your day job, but to me, I look at a SQL query and I go, oh, what's going on? I don't know. And without reading it line by line, yeah, I'm not sure. Like I can kind of pick out words like join. Okay, we're joining something, and convert down here in pink, converting something, but otherwise I'd really have to kind of study this to know what's going on. Whereas I think one of the greatest things about Tableau Prep is that it's very clear, sort of reading from left to right, the input to the output, the steps that are going on. and without even renaming or touching anything at the moment with this workflow, it kind of is giving me a clear indication that there's a join happening here. There's some aggregation happening here. There's some cleaning happening here. And it's all quite visual and easy to understand at a high level what's going on, I think, before we even dive into any detail. So those are
Far
some
less
of
overwhelming than the SQL code. I will say that,
yes.
yes. And it's a lot prettier to look at too.
Exactly.
That's
It's
so
got all nice
funny
colors.
because I would think the other way. I'm like, oh, okay, that's SQL, so it looks fun. But that's just because I'm not, I haven't been in prep as much as you are. So hopefully this will seem very easy and simple after today.
Yes. That's the goal. That's the goal. And one of my favorite things as well about prep is that you get little recommendation light bulbs pop up for you. So this looks like you might want to do something to it. And I'll show you how that can be a useful indicator later. So why is that self-service data prep important? It's about freeing up analysts and giving them more time to do more exciting analysis rather than keep manually cleaning things in Excel. Saves you having to keep going back to IT if that's kind of your structure of having to get IT to clean your data and restructure it for you. We all probably have been there where we've kind of had to keep asking someone to do something and you just think, oh, if only I could just do this myself. So that's what it's all about. So that's kind of the majority of the PowerPoint. It's time to go to prep. But before that, I'll just quickly introduce Prep and Data. It was started in 2019, so it's nearly 2 years old, by Carl and Jonathan. And then me and Tom joined in last year too. And it's just all about giving you that space to practice your prep without using business data. So you don't have to just rely on your colleagues to help you learn. You've got a whole community out there on Twitter willing to help you with these data sets, which are often quite fun to work on your skills that way. So let's go to Prep and Data. And I'll show you the challenge that we're going to be working with today. So in the challenge index on the Prep and Data site, we have got all of the challenges, all the historical ones. We're going to be looking at week 44 of 2020.
Spooky sales.
Spooky sales. This is my favorite challenge I think I've ever created. It's looking at Halloween costume data. So we've got Halloween sales from different countries. So all of the costumes are in different languages. So how do we group those different costume types together? How do we take some of the information about how they've been sold at either like full price or it gets reduced after Halloween to half price and then quarter price after that? How do we take that information and make something a bit more useful out of it? And the best thing about this challenge actually is that we don't need to write any calculations at all in order to do our data prep. So something that's great about Tableau Prep is that you can just click a lot of different buttons and it will do all the cleaning for you. It'll do the work for you. It'll write the
Sounds
calculations for you. So let's go ahead and go into Tableau Prep. So I've already downloaded the data. So I'll just maximize that. This is kind of what you see when you open Tableau Prep. I am always very lazy and I just pick up my input file from my downloads folder and I drag it into the interface and it kind of pops up. It even starts off the workflow for me with an input step already there. So that's great. I can kind of see down here in this table the metadata of my data set. So I've got 6 fields and I can see they're all strings at the moment. That might be something that I want to sort out at some point because we've got numeric data, date data. So I'll definitely be wanting to clean that up a little bit. And you can see that not only has it started off our workflow for us, but it's even got this kind of gray outline showing us to kind of hover and click there to start the workflow with a clean step. So I'll take that suggestion and I'll go for that and click on it. And already you can kind of see that we've got quite a lot going on. With our data here, we've got all the different fields. We can see all of the distinct values in each of those fields. So we can see that we've got 44 different costume types at the moment. We've got 22 countries and so on and so forth. And it's kind of got these weird gray bars behind each of those. So we can see sort of how many rows we have for each of those data values. So that's already, we're learning a lot more about our data than if we were just looking at the table below, because we can see that there's a table below there, which is kind of just laying it out as we would normally see it. But looking at it in the profile pane, it just gives us a lot better insight into the data itself. For example, Hungary and Indonesia, we have far fewer sales of costumes for whatever reason. So I'm going to kind of take this step by step and do a field at a time and look at how we can clean them up. So if we start with the costume field over on the left-hand side, then what we want to do, we can see some of those values there. We've got like cat, we've got chat, like the French for cat. We've got all this devil and diable. We want to try and group all these together into one English word. So how can we do that? If we kind of go to the more options of the field, then we have a group values option. And there are 4 different ways that we can sort of group our data together here. We can look at we can manually select them, which is going to be self-explanatory. We can do it by pronunciation. Tableau Prep has quite a cool algorithm that looks at how it's pronounced in English and tries to match that way. We can look at common characters. So that's kind of when you have all the same letters but in a different order. And the spelling as well, which again is some kind of algorithm behind the clever magic. We're going to try that one because I think that maybe that might be able to match some of them up.
Fun.
Oh, this is so cool.
So already we've gone from 44 different costume types to 14, and you can see the little paperclip there to show which ones it's grouped. And if I click on, say, cat, for example, then you can see that it's kind of picking up a lot of the different types of.
We're 2 seconds into this. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I think that this is probably one of my favorite features.
I had no idea.
So magic. But we can still see that we've got some that we might want to also include. So we can control the sort of sensitivity of this by the slider at the top. So if I kind of, I guess, reduce the sensitivity to make it a bit more lenient, then I go down to 10 values. So already that's looking like we're nearly there. The only issue that I can see from that is that we've got devil and diable, which need to be grouped together. And I've had a little play around and I haven't been able to find the best way to group those 2 together without just manually doing an extra step. So it got most of them. We'll let prep off. So to do the extra grouping, I can simply click on my devil, click on my diable, but whilst holding down Control, and then right click and then group those values together to create that extra grouping. It has named it diable, which isn't ideal. I will rename that devil. Usually when you're doing the algorithm, you might wonder, how is it grouping them? It usually chooses the value that has the most rows. And because I've got a lot of Australia and the US and the UK in this data set, then it's going to naturally default to the English spelling in most of these instances. So that's our costume field, nice and clean.
That was so much faster than anything I could have done in Excel or Tableau for that matter.
Yeah, it's a lot less manual, and something cool as well that I might mention just because I like talking about prep is that if I were to be doing some other type of grouping and I click on this cat group and I know that later on I'm going to go to a different country where they spell it, I don't know, with 2 T's, then I can add that member to the group as well. And you can see there's a little red dot that is next to it that says that, okay, the value is not present in the data set. But if it ever were, I would pick it up and put it in there too. So that's cool as well. Yeah. That's like going a step further, like if you know how your data is going to change later on. So that is our first field, nice and clean. Now we're going to look at our country field.
So, I do have a question.
Yep.
So one thing I was struggling with, do you want to have a step for each thing you touch?
So you don't have to. It's kind of personal preference. But for me personally, I know that if I'm building up a workflow, I kind of want there to be a step for each thing so that I can be good and go back and name it and say like this was cleaning the costume, so I'll just label it as costume. So just for
it helps to kind of follow
troubleshooting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like
That
best practice. Because you've also got like the changes at the side here. So at the moment we have 2 changes where we grouped those values, whereas if you have like 20 of them, it gets a bit more difficult to find.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's look at our country field. And this is where I'm going to talk about the little recommendation light bulb that you might be able to see in the country above the country field there. So if I click on that, then it's telling me to change the data role to a country, which makes sense. It kind of gives it that globe icon that you'd see in Tableau Desktop. But then I've got some issues here of my data that have been highlighted now. For example, the Philippines and Slovenia, they're spelt slightly wrong. They've got E's missing, I think. But we've still got a recommendation icon. So we'll click on that and see what it says. So it's flagging up those values with those exclamation marks to say there's some kind of issue here. And it's suggesting, because it knows that we're looking at a country field, these are the countries it probably will be. So that's super clever. And we can just apply that and it'll fix our little issues that we have there.
Great for people that can't spell, like me.
Yeah. Yep. And something cool as well about changing it to be a country is I can right click on my step here and preview it in Tableau Desktop just to see how that's worked. And hopefully Tableau Desktop will open for me. It usually takes my little machine a little while to load it. Then we can see how we're doing with our data prep, how we might use it in Tableau Desktop, sorry. And you can see we've got that little globe icon next to our country. So when we double click on that and bring it into the view, that's where all of our countries are. So that's nice to just be able to verify that visually that's worked.
Yes.
Always good.
Mapped out in Tableau. Oh, that's fantastic.
So we know that it's doing the right job. So that's nice to know. So we've done 2 of our fields now. Now that I've started naming, I should probably keep naming and keep it nice and clean and well documented in the workflow. So I'm going to add on a nice little clean step again to do my date field, because at the moment they are strings. It's a string field, sorry. I can tell that by the little data type at the top there, ABC string. And I know that I want a date to be a date. So it's as easy as clicking on the data type there and changing it to a date. I don't have to go in and write a calculation. I can just clean that up nicely. And you'll notice how the profile is now slightly different. We can see the sort of distribution of our data at a yearly level. It's made like a little year on the axes here with a little bar chart. So we can see we've got the most dates in 2019. So that's kind of quite nice to see. But if we want to see individual dates again, we can just go to our little options here and change the view to be detailed view so that we can see all the different dates. And what's quite nice as well with this view is that we're seeing that for all of our dates that we have in this data set, they're kind of just making this kind of really block kind of bar chart. So we've got the same number of rows for every single date. So that's another good visual check that our data is probably quite nicely. We're not missing any rows. We haven't got any duplication going on. It's all kind of uniform. That's the word I was looking for. Cool. So one of the things that we're doing as part of this challenge, if I go back to the requirements, just to show you that we've kind of done step 1. Well, we've done inputting the data, we've done the costume, and we've done the country names. One cool thing about prep as well is if you're working with fiscal years, if your company has different financial years, then you can change that in prep as well. So for this particular company, their fiscal year starts in November, the day after Halloween. So they have their best sales day on the last day of their financial year. And we can use that information in prep as well. So what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to change our date to just be the financial year. So I'm just going to go into the three dots menu again there, and I'm going to convert my dates to a custom fiscal year.
Nice.
And yeah, I can change that to a year number, and I can say that my fiscal year starts in November and just convert all of those dates into those years. And you can see that it kind of goes ahead and does that without us having to write any horrible calculations about, you know, if the month is greater than this, if that year's, yeah. I'm sure we've
Taking
all
a
been
lot
there
of work
to do
already.
that. I've had to write some horribly long calculations before to get that to work. So in this particular example, we're only interested in this year and last year. I mean 2020.
Yeah.
Pretend we're still in 2020.
Yeah.
The most recent year and the one before that. There you go. That's what we're interested in. So we're going to exclude 2018 from our data set. And when I click on that value there, then you see the option pops up at the top, and I can just exclude it. So that's nice and easy to filter to only the data that I'm interested in as well. So that was our date field. I will change this field, rather than still being called date, I'm going to call it fiscal year, just so that we're clear on what it's telling us. And great. And now we're going to be starting to think about our sales fields. So can you see the other sales field at the end here, or the camera pictures covering it up for you?
I see 3.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's fine. It's just on my screen. That's fine.
You can move us, Jenny.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just wanted to check if you can see it, it's fine, because I kind of know what's there. So what we're wanting to do at the moment, we've got our sales at full price, half price, and quarter price, all in 3 different columns, which isn't the most useful. We'd probably prefer all of our sales to be in 1 column. So we probably want to do a bit of reshaping of our data at this point. And to reshape our data, we're going to need to think about using a different step. So far I've just been adding clean steps after my input, but this time when I hit the little plus after my clean step, I'll actually talk to you a little bit about the options that we have in there. So we can do aggregation. An aggregate step is just going to change the level of detail of our data that we're working with. It's going to aggregate it up. So that can be useful for many reasons, obviously. We've got our pivoting step, which is where we can do our reshaping of our data. You can kind of see from the little icon there, there's a little arrow showing movement. Many people, I'm sure, are familiar with pivot tables in Excel. Similar kind of premise. We can join our data, which is bringing 2 different data sets together in some way or another. We've got the option to union. We've even got the option to insert scripts, where you can write Python or R scripts if that's your thing. And an output, which we'll come to at the end. For now, we'll just be looking at our pivot step. So we'll be reshaping our data. We'll be taking these fields here, these sales fields, and we'll be pivoting, we'll be turning those columns into rows instead. So where we've got those column headers of full price, half price, quarter price, we now want those to be rows. And we've got a nice little diagram there as well of what's happening. I like that it's quite visual to show you that. So I can either pick up these columns and drag them over into this orange box here, or to make it a little bit more dynamic, what I would usually do is use the wildcard search to pivot. So when I click on that, it gives me a little box here to type in. So if each of my fields that I want to pivot has the word sales in it, so I can just write the word sales here, and it will go ahead and automatically pick up all of those sales fields, which is, yeah, it keeps it dynamic, it keeps it nice and simple, and yeah, I hate any time I have to click and drag a long way.
Yeah,
I'm
and
just
thinking
lazy.
forward about what your data will look like if you bring in others, so that's going to pick that up too, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Can you unpivot too here, or is this the step that you would do for unpivoting as well?
So do you mean if you wanted to pivot, like undo this pivot almost?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so you could easily just add another pivot step after this, and you could change the pivot type that you're doing from columns to rows to columns. And that would do the same, do the reverse, sorry.
Yeah.
Cool. So if we add in a clean step at the moment, because our data's kind of squashed over to the right-hand side of the screen, not a pivot. Let's add a clean step. And we can see that we've got these two new fields at the start where we've had our pivoted data. So we've got our sales data here with our currency and then the numeric value. And then we've got our pivot one names field here, nicely named, for telling us if it's full price, half price, or quarter price. So we've got a lot of repeated information here. It says sales at and price in each line of this column, which is a lot of repetition. We don't need that many words. So how do we quickly clean that up? Something that we can do there is we can use our split values option, and we can tell Tableau Prep to do an automatic split, see what it wants to do, split up this column somehow. And if I apply that, then it kind of looks at each of those rows and kind of sees that it's got repetition between them, and it'll pick out the bits that make it unique. So we've got our full, half, and quarter there, which, again, that makes me really happy. I don't have to go and write a replace calculation. I can just split it out with one click. So I'm just going to rename that as price so that that is nice. And then I can get rid of this field because that's just containing too much information. Cool. And then
You're
if I'm
making
looking,
this look so easy.
it is, I promise. So if we look at our sales field that we have here, we've got quite a lot of null values, and that's just because any row in our data that we had, something can't be sold at half price and at quarter price. So when we've pivoted it, it's just brought all those nulls down into a row that we can now just filter out, basically. All these rows that are nulls, again, in that same way where we just click on it and click on exclude. And that gets rid of a lot of unnecessary rows from our data. Okay, so if we look at our sales field now, then we can see that we've got our currency and then a space and then the amount that we're looking at. So maybe we can use that splitting logic again to help us out. But if we kind of, I'm going to pick a country like the Philippines, which may have a different type of currency. So we've got like the peso, if you can see down the bottom here. So, okay, that's still fitting the structure of having the currency, a space, and then the value. That's not too bad, but I think it's Romania that has two words for its currency. I don't actually know how to pronounce Romanian currency, Nulu, potentially. But doing a space, splitting it up just on the first space isn't going to give us what we want. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to look at this string of data that we have, and we're going to need to say, okay, the last space that we have, split off what's after that last space for us. So just give us those numbers after that is what we're wanting it to do. So to do that, rather than selecting the automatic split option, we're going to do a custom split. We want to be a bit more picky about what's happening. So we're going to say after the space, and then we want the last one field so that we just get those numbers through. So when we hit split this time, then we can see that we just have those numbers there, and we can change our data type from a string to be a decimal. And again, it does that bar chart summary view, which is useful. We can see it's kind of all hovering around the 0 to 100 million mark, and that's just where we have those different currencies sort of giving us a long tail, which that's not an issue for us because we will clean up our field that we have left behind here to have our currency so that we understand why those values might be high. So rather than trying to split this out using complicated logic, why don't we just get rid of the numbers and get rid of the decimal point, and then that will only leave behind our currency. That seems simple enough. So we can use an option here called clean, and we can just go ahead and remove the numbers from this field, and it'll just make them all disappear. And already we've gone down to just having 12 values, which is good. We have 22 countries, but a lot of those are in Europe, so they'll all be using the same currency, for example. So now we just need to get rid of that full stop, and we can do the same sort of logic by removing the punctuation. And that takes away our full stops there too, which
Very
is
cool.
nice and clean. And something cool that I just wanted to show you as well, that step of removing punctuation, removing the numbers. If I kind of look at my changes pane over on the left-hand side that we briefly mentioned earlier, then we can see it's written a calculation for that. And if I go on the edit button, I can sort of see exactly what it's written there. So it's using regex to do that cleaning. And it's a great way to sort of start to learn regex if you're wanting to do sort of those complex string calculations, because you can see what it's doing. It's taking that field, it's replacing any digits with nothing. So that's just a great way to sort of see that and to start to understand what's going on in the background. So
I love that you can see that back end work.
Yeah, same. So then you can start to really understand the calculations that are happening. That's so fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a great feature. So I'm just going to do some renaming because I realize I have left these messy titles there. And these are our sales. We only have one step to go, you will be pleased to know.
Our dot came back though.
Oh, did I close that rather than? Oh, it's because I was still clicked on
Oh, okay.
previous change. So you can sort of click step by step to
Nice.
see where different changes occur.
I'm kind of glad you did that because it would have happened to me after, and I'm like, oh, what did I do?
Yeah, no, I wish that was intentional because that would have been really good.
It totally was.
It totally was. It totally
All
was.
planned.
So this was cleaning up our sales. I will rename that too to keep being consistent. And our final step, if I go back to the challenge to remind us all, I'll just show you what the output looks like. We basically have our costume, our country, our currency, and our price. And then we have our sales from 2019 and our sales from 2020 side by side so that we can compare line by line. That's the output that we're looking for. So in order to achieve that, we need to do a little bit of reshaping of the data again. And this is kind of the reverse pivot, if you like. So rather than doing our columns to rows, we're going to take our rows and turn them into columns. So for our fiscal year that we have, that's now going to be our new column header, because at the moment it's kind of down here in our rows, but we'll have one for 2019 and one for 2020 now. So we pick that up and we drag that into the orange box at the top there. And then you might get a bit worried that something's gone wrong because you see a little warning triangle pop up, but that's just making sure that you put something in underneath those headers, if you like. You've said that there's going to be 2019, 2020, so what's going underneath them? What's the end of the pivot? So what we're going to put under the pivot is the sales field. So we just pick that up and drag that down to the bottom there too. And we can see that it's doing an aggregation at that stage. It's doing a sum of sales, which we're pretty happy with that. We kind of want it to sum across all the years for each country and costume type. So that's actually working how we would like it to. So let's just check out our data now, because again, it's all squished up at the side. We'll check it out in a nice kind of large view. And it's looking good. It's got 231 rows. We've gone from having at the start, if I click back, we had about 8,000 rows that we were working with. So now we've cleaned up a data set to only have about 231 rows. It's a lot more manageable. We can do some analysis on that. But it's a bit higgledy-piggledy. I'd rather rearrange my columns. So I would drag them, pick them up and sort of drag them around here just to change the view for myself. So I have my costume from different countries in different currencies with all those different prices. And then I'd rename these fields just be 2019 sales and 2020 sales too. And that is our data set, nice and clean. If I kind of show it as just a table there, then you can sort of see, if I read across, for example, ghost costumes in the Netherlands, They sold more in 2019 than they did in 2020 at full price. Fascinating analysis that you can do on this data set that I completely made up.
Where have you been all my life?
Oh, you made this data set up, Jenny?
Yeah.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time Googling different translations of costumes.
Very cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and then from there you could then go and output that in the sort of usual ways. You've got a few different options just to talk about, to a local file, to a published data source on Tableau server, or as a database, as I was mentioning earlier. I won't kind of go through all those different options, but that makes the data usable once you output it from prep.
That's fantastic. And then the output type, I think I was running into an issue with that. What is the output type?
Okay, so
I guess
have
you select that after you select what you want it to output to, right? Okay.
Yeah. So with a file, you can either do a Tableau hyperfile or you can do a CSV.
Perfect. Okay.
When you're browsing, it won't give you the option to change it. So you're kind of
That's what I was doing. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So you have to select
name
that
it there.
before you browse where you want it to go. I kept
Yeah.
doing it and I was like, what is this hyper? Okay.
It's basically, yeah, it's just a Tableau data source, data extract that's kind of optimized for Tableau.
Right, and it runs super fast just for efficiency and stuff.
Why it's called hyper. Okay. I didn't know about that. So I just saw that and thought, this is some kind of prep thing. What is going on? This is fantastic.
No, great. I'll just share a slide with some extra resources on it in case you are interested in them. So there's the Prep and Data link. I mean, you can search for Prep and Data, you'll find it. There's a book that Carl wrote, who's one of the co-hosts of Prep and Data, which is great for getting started too. And something that is really useful as well, this is one of those challenges where you don't need to write any calculations, so it's great for beginners. So this link will take you to a few of those other types of challenges to help get you started with prep. And in fact, we just did a beginners month for the month of January on Prep and Data. So it's all gentle challenges to introduce you.
It's a good time to learn is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly. It's a good time to get involved.
So there's a challenge every week, and where is that posted apart from the website? Do you guys tweet it and whatnot as well?
We do also tweet it. So it's always going to have the hashtag Prep and Data. So you can find that. It will be either me, Carl, or Tom that posts it. We're
like
unhelpful.
I need to do that next week.
Okay,
yes, definitely.
I feel like you're calling us out right now. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. This was so helpful. It went from very intimidating like 2 weeks ago-ish to okay, I'm not so scared. And in fact, this is so powerful. This is so powerful. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. Give me the opportunity to talk to you guys. It's been really fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm gonna bug you so much.
Please do. Please do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jenny.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.